Welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Lotta, and today I'm going to show you another quick and easy basic cake recipe that is perfect for layered cakes. Now I'm sure you already know that I'm a huge fan of sponge cake, and most of my layered cakes use a sponge cake, but every now and then I do like switching it up, so I figured I would show you a different cake that is just as good for layered cakes, just a little bit different. So for this basic recipe, you're going to need 4 room temperature eggs, 200 grams of sugar with a pinch of salt, a good splash of vanilla for flavor, 300 grams of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 200 milliliters each of milk and oil. Now to that base recipe, you can add just about any other flavorings that you want. In this case, I'm also going to be adding 100 grams of ground almonds, but you can also add ground hazelnuts, poppy seeds, you can fold in some blueberries or add some lemon zest, or really anything else that you want to add to customize your basic cake. Now it is important to note that you want your ingredients to be at room temperature, especially your eggs and your milk. Now if you happen to just take your eggs out of the fridge and they're still pretty cold, there are some ways around that. I usually end up just putting them in a bowl and filling it up with warm water and letting them sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and that basically warms the eggs right up and it brings them to room temperature. Now in regards to your oil, I would recommend using a more neutral oil like canola or sunflower rather than coconut oil or olive oil. Unless that is the flavor that you are going for in your cake, then those are great options to add that flavor in. But if you want your other flavors to kind of shine, I would say using a neutral oil is the way to go. Now this cake also comes together pretty quickly. Now we're going to start like we would with our sponge cake, and we're going to whisk together our eggs, sugar, salt, and vanilla until that is super light and fluffy for about 5 to 7 minutes. You basically just want it to pretty much double in size, and you don't want to feel any sugar in between your fingers. Now I always like using my KitchenAid when I'm whisking up my eggs just to get it really nice and fluffy, and then I have both of my hands free to do other things, but you can just as easily use a hand mixer, or you can do it by hand as well. It might just take a little bit longer. Now as you can see, our egg mixture is super fluffy. It's definitely more than doubled in size. You can also see it's more of like a pale white color now. So this is perfect. Now at this point, I'm actually also going to stop using my KitchenAid and I'm going to do the rest by hand. That way I can control everything a little bit more and I'm not over mixing it, because I want to keep as much of this fluff as I can. Now I'm just going to really quickly mix in both of my wet ingredients, so my milk and my oil, and once that is just about mixed in, we can go ahead and sieve and fold in our dry ingredients as well. Now as you can see, it's a little bit more liquid now obviously, but we still have a lot of fluff, which is perfect. Now I also like to sieve in my dry ingredients in 2 batches. That way it's not weighing down my mixture as much, and it's also a little bit easier to fold in. Now once everything is pretty much mixed in, that is the point where I also fold in any nuts or cocoa powder or any of those things. Now at this point we want to move a little bit quickly because we don't want our cake to lose any of that fluffiness and airiness that we worked so hard to get into it. So we're going to quickly transfer it into a pre-lined tin. Now I only ever really line the bottom of my tin, again just personal preference. And my tin is, I believe it's 22 centimeters in diameter, but I will double check and I'll blend it into the screen. Now at this point our cake can wander into the oven that's been preheated to 360 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius, and it's going to bake for about 30 minutes. Now again, you just want to make sure that it's nice and golden brown and that it's obviously cooked through, and that might vary depending on your oven. Now, as you could see while I was cutting the cake, it was a lot easier to cut through the cake, and it wasn't quite as crumbly and airy as the sponge cake was. Now, it's still quite fluffy, as you can tell by all the little air pockets, but it is a lot easier to get out more layers from this cake. I definitely easily could have gotten 4 thinner layers out of this cake. I only need 3, but as you can see, it is a lot easier to get more layers. So if you want your cake to have thinner layers, I would recommend using this dough over our sponge cake. And that also makes this cake really good for tiered cakes where you need your cake to have a little bit more structure and be a little bit stronger. And it's also really good for cakes that you need to carve. So it's really easy to cut into this cake without it crumbling everywhere, which would be a little bit more difficult to do with a sponge cake. So that's going to be everything for today's video. If you enjoyed this basic recipe, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or write me a comment down below. And as always, the whole recipe is going to be in the description box as well.